Hello YouTubers out there, this is Jerry Sutterby at the movies. So I'm going to mention a few films that I think are worth seeing on Halloween. One that is fairly new that I think deserves inclusion. And there are many that could be discussed, but these are among the cream of the crop. The really best ones, I think, that you could see on Halloween. Really any time of the year, I think, if you like horror films. But these in particular stand out for me. And so we'll start off right away with, again, if you don't know what to see, some of these are predictable choices. For some, maybe not so predictable. A couple of them certainly are. So you'll see them on a lot of 10 best lists for horror films. But anyway, I'm going to include this one, which is fairly new. Came out in 2019. This is the newest of the bunch. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. And this is based on books written in 1981 by the same title. And this deals with young people who find a book inside of a haunted house. And the book is being controlled by the ghost of a girl who had been, I forget if she was murdered or just abused, or I can't remember now. I've only really seen this once, but it was quite effective, I thought. This is quite an effective film. There's no gore in this movie. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but there's a lot of hideous gore in films nowadays. This one is appropriate for really everyone, but anyone under the age of 13 might be a little too intense. But it is an intense ride, this movie. It was intense even for me, so that says a lot right there. It's directed by Andre Overdal, a director from Norway who I interviewed about 10 years ago. He did a film called Troll Hunter, which is quite good, if you haven't seen it. And he can definitely do horror. This guy, he can do it. And executive produced by Guillermo del Toro, of course, as most of you know. And but this one was quite effective, especially the scarecrow that's featured in the cover art here. Um, Definitely worth checking out. Quite an intense ride, this movie. So if you have some preteen, early teen kids who want a scary good time that's somewhat upbeat to a certain extent, this movie will do. The classic, George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead. This is still the best zombie film ever made. I've seen a lot of zombie films, even Romero's own dead films, which are many. But this one is the best one, and it always will be, because it was shot on such a low budget, 16mm black and white, out in Pittsburgh. George A. Romero's first film. But this is the standard by which all zombie films, I think, are measured, is with this film. Um, so, yeah, there's not really enough good things to say. This is a really great film. And it's got one of the most stunning endings of all time. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. A real shocker. The whole movie is still a shocker. Shot in black and white. I mean, to me, I think you probably will still not sleep quite right after seeing this movie. Night of the Living Dead. Predictable choice. I think a lot of people would choose that one. This one I struggled a little bit, but if you like goofy, tongue-in-cheek horror that could still scare you and make you laugh in equal measure, it would be Sam Raimi's Evil Dead 2. Why not? Still fairly original, and about a cabin haunted by all sorts of evil spirits. And just like Scary Stories, you start reading from a book and things happen. Don't read certain incantations, and that's exactly what happens with Book of the Dead. Scary Stories is about a book really that starts to write itself for each one of the characters' fates. So it's an original idea. But this one, tongue-in-cheek horror, it is considered a classic. It's one of Sam Raimi's best films, absolutely. And Bruce Campbell, I mean, and the evil spirits. This is really good stuff. Classic. Probably a predictable choice as well. Some people might choose the original Evil Dead, which is a little more serious technically than this movie. This one is not a perfect horror film, but it's one of the best werewolf films I've ever seen, for sure, and still holds true today. 1981's The Howling by Joe Dante. These are This has one of the best werewolf transformations you'll ever see. At least there's one in particular that really stands out. And the elongation of the nose and the forming of the canine teeth, the ears, everything. It's just an amazing transformation for actually also somewhat a low budget film, believe it or not. I've listened to the commentary. Stars Dee Wallace, when she was known as Dee Wallace Stone, with her late husband Christopher Stone. It's got Kevin McCarthy. It has John Carradine, and a lot of them turn into werewolves in this colony. And this is where Dee Wallace, who plays a news reporter who's been traumatized by a serial killer who actually turns out to be a werewolf. She's hiding and, not hiding, but she's out there for some therapy and rest. And, well, she gets more than she bargained for in this colony. And it's one of the few special times, once again, that you get to see Dee Wallace starring with her late husband. This is a super film. And it has tongue-in-cheek in it, for sure. But the werewolf transformation was scary. There are moments where you don't even see the werewolves at all. You see their hand or things like that. It's just, this is really classy stuff, good stuff. I don't know if classy is the right word, but it's a terrific movie. Not very gory either. This one is an absolute classic. And now it's an example of a film where you leave a lot to the imagination. For some people, this is actually more of a black comedy. Some people say that about Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. But this is one of those films that just the very idea of it being understated to a certain extent lends it so much credibility with the scare factor. It's not one of those movies where there's a scare every few minutes, you don't see much of anything, but you certainly get a full idea of the evil that's lurking and who is complicit. That would be Rosemary's Baby, based on Ira Levin's bestseller, directed by Roman Polanski, and now I don't remember. Was it? Oh yeah, it was written for the screen by Roman Polanski. Mia Farrow, of course, plays Rosemary. John Cassavetes is her husband. They move into the apartments known as the Dakotas, out in New York City by Central Park, I believe, where John Lennon used to live, and was unfortunately shot right in front of it. Those apartments. Great film. Ruth Gordon. It's just a great cast. It's mysterious, spooky, scary, funny, beguiling, tantalizing, and again leaves a lot to the imagination. And well, the baby, you never even see what the baby looks like. Whereas in the novel by Ira Levin, he gives a more or less full description of what the baby looks like. This film keeps it even more ambiguous, and more really leaving it to the imagination. You don't really see films like this anymore. Very rarely. I can't even think. I haven't seen a lot of current horror films, but the ones I have seen, when especially invoking the supernatural, do not leave things to the imagination, not nearly as well as this film does. Rosemary's Baby. Also remade, but I never seen the remake, and the sequel is no good. Again, this one, it's sort of one of those that has been hailed as the scariest movie of all time, and I would say it's pretty close for scary supernatural goings on, and very effective, very realistically made. And I'm sure a lot of people would pick it for Halloween. The Exorcist, directed by William Friedkin, written by William Peter Blatty, who unfortunately passed away not long ago. Starring Ellen Burstyn, who's supposedly reprising a role of Regan McNeil's mother in a new Exorcist movie made by director David Gordon Green, who recently helmed the new Halloween trilogy for Blumhouse Pictures. Anyway, Linda Blair, you know what the movie is about. Exorcism, possession, demonic possession. A far cry from what Rosemary's Baby does. This movie is very blunt, but effectively so. It needed to be. And it's also an excellent book. If you just want to read the book, it will scare you as well. That's a very frightening book to read. But the film really captures the book beautifully, with minor differences, which I have written about on my blog site. So, The Exorcist. This one is The Virgin You've Never Seen, which has additional scenes that feel slightly redundant, but effective nonetheless, especially a spider walk, which was left out of the original version. Either version will do. This film, this one has, the sound is even better, so they really enhanced it. But they added things that didn't quite work, that were not in the original version at all, or for that matter, the original cut of the film. But nonetheless, The Exorcist. I could have included more, but I wanted to keep this short. Now, this one, of course, is a no-brainer. It's Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween. And you know what this is about. This is the first Michael Myers movie. And as far as I'm concerned, despite the recent success of, I think, anyway, Halloween Ends, which I did like, it should have ended with this movie. It had the perfect ending. Michael Myers, as you know, spoiler alert, was gone. And he disappeared into this town of Haddonfield. It was the perfect ending. But what are you going to do? That's just the way it is. Nonetheless, this is still a classic suspense thriller. It's atmospheric as hell. It is so well made. No gore. Of course, there are some kills, but they're done in a way that, you know, filmmakers could learn from it today. How to do them in a way where you're still including the atmosphere and the direction. It just, there's something about it that is still quite effective. This film still frightens people who are 20 years younger than I am. I'm 51. And that's a good sign that this movie can still hold up after all this time. This one and The Shining, certainly. And they were made so long ago. This is a classic. I mean, on Halloween, you got to see Halloween. So there you go. I could include some others. Trick or Treat, which is really quite good, but I've only really seen it once. These I've seen more than once, with the exception of Scary Stories, which I will see again. And I was planning to review it on this channel, but I didn't, so at least I mentioned it. But I would say these in particular are great films. But you may have some other choices out there. Or maybe they include some of these. Let me know what your thoughts are on what I selected, and what are some of your favorites to see on Halloween, especially Halloween. So if you like what you hear, please subscribe to my channel. And that's all I got to say. Happy Halloween to everyone out there. Thank you for I think I got a couple of new subscribers, so that's pretty good. So I want to hope I get more and more. We'll see. A little side note that I'll mention, and this has nothing to do with movie reviews or my love of films, really, to some extent, but I've written my first short story, which I've only published on my blog. This is not going to be a nationally a national, a book that will be available on Amazon or whatever or bookstores. But I mean, it would be nice. It is a completely original story. It's called The Ghostly Reel, and I really enjoyed working on it. And I hope there are people out there who will read it. So I will put the link to it. And it's a short story. It's almost a complete final draft, but it's a totally unique story for me. Anyway, I wouldn't have done this if I didn't think it was. And anyway, I did that. So it's been sort of 25 years in the making. 25 years ago, I had an idea for a short story, and then about 17 years ago, it developed into something with a little more with horror elements and supernatural horror, which I always love. It's my favorite kind of horror. And now I've started writing it a few months ago, and then went back and stopped, and now it was available. So I'll share the link. And this is Jerry Saravia, The Movies, signing off.